Welcome to Alyvix. This video tutorial explains how conditionals and loops work in Alyvix through a simplified example that manipulates objects in PowerPoint to run a simulated car race. Conditionals are typically used in Alyvix when an element is optional, so that if it isn't matched, the rest of the script is still executed. Alyvix has two types, if true and if false. The behavior of both depends on whether or not the test case object serving as the antecedent matches the current interface. The consequent is also either a test case object or a section script. A loop in Alyvix executes a single test case object or a section a fixed number of times. The number of cycles through the loop depends on the number of rows in its assigned map. In this example, it's 3 times. To demonstrate the use of conditionals and loops in Alyvix, we'll use PowerPoint to move a race car around a track. We have a pit board in the middle to post the number of laps completed, and a starting light that changes from red to green when the race should start. The car starts in the box, moves to the starting line, and waits for the light, then runs 3 laps around the racetrack since the map has 3 rows. Before starting the race, we want to make sure our car is in the box, and not in the parking lot. One way we can say this is if the car is not in the box, then move it there. To do that, we need 2 separate test case objects, one to check if the car is there, and one that moves it to the right place. We don't need to interact with the screen for the first step, so we can give it a name right away and unset the brake and measure flags. Whenever you use a step as the first half of a conditional, you should unset the brake flag so that if it fails when it runs, the entire test case won't stop running. Once we've created both objects, we can turn them into a conditional step by moving the antecedent to the scripting panel and double-clicking on the Run block at the left until it changes to if false. Then we can set the Move Car to Box step as the consequent. The car should start the race when the light turns green. To do this, we can create a conditional that will notice when the light turns green and move the car out onto the track. Rather than an if false, here we want an if true to trigger our action when the light becomes green. If we were to use an if false like last time, then even purple or blue would cause the race to start. What do we do when the light is green? Well, we need to grab the race car using the hold action, and then show Alyvix how to move the car up to the starting line by setting the point to the correct position. We then need to unselect the car, which we do by clicking an empty space. Now we can connect our 2 steps with a conditional. We can assume the previous conditional worked, so the car is now in the box. And now we set this condition to be an if true, since that's the event we're waiting for. The race car will be ready at this point, but we also want to display a message that we're starting. We can use a nifty trick with PowerPoint where we select a text box, click on it, and use the Control key along with the letter A in Alyvix's string field to select existing text and replace it. We then have to remember to click somewhere else so the text box is no longer selected for the next step. To make the car go around the track, let's first select the car itself. Now change group with the 2 key and select all 3 corners, along with the start light. Then change the group again with the 3 key and select an anchor like the checkered flag. To move the car, we again use the hold action, followed by a series of move actions, and finally a release action. As long as we put the car back down where we picked it up, we can do any number of laps we want. Now we're going to use the click action with set point 2 times, once with group 2 to put the car at the beginning of the loop, and once with group 3 to deselect the car. Since a race lap will need more than 1 step, we'll create a section named Drive to hold them. The first step will be the one we just created that moves the car around the racetrack by moving it to each corner. After each lap, we also want to update the pit board. So using the same trick as before, we select the text in the text box and overwrite it. The text we want to display will be different for each lap, so we'll retrieve it from a map that we're going to create in the next step. This needs a special notation. Here we'll select the value from map column 1, with the row determined by the current loop iteration. Let's say we want the car to go 3 times around the track, so we add a map, give it a name, and put 3 rows in it, where the values are the text strings we want to display on the pit board. We create our loop by dragging the name of our map over to the scripting panel, where it will show up as for_map_run_loop_object. We also shouldn't forget to create an exit section that resets everything to the original state every time our test case finishes. Okay, let's use Alyvix Robot to run our test case. It moves the car to the box, but nothing else happens until we change the light to green. The moment we do, Alyvix moves the race car to the starting line, changes the pitboard message to go, and we're zooming down the track. Okay, maybe it's not Formula 1 yet, but what more could you want from conditionals and loops? Well, besides cheering crowds and champagne everywhere, of course. In this video, we looked at the two types of conditionals, if true and if false, and at using a map to create a loop, where we can put values from the map within the interface using the string field. Thanks for watching this Alyvix video tutorial. Be sure to check out the Alyvix website, blog, and user guide at these links.